So thank you, Kashan, on the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll continue our discussion on the first canto, chapter 14, from verse 34. This chapter is titled Disappearance of Krishna. So we'll start with our Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ravi Prabhu, do you mind muting your phone? You're muting your laptop?
Yes, Prabhu. I think generally they mute it for
Narayanam namaskrityam naram cheva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udiraye nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravane Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Pashachadeshatarani. So quick recap of where we are. The 14th chapter is essentially a conversation between Maharaj Yudhishthir and Arjun. The 13th chapter was a conversation between Maharaj Yudhishthir and his brother Bhim, in which Yudhishthir shared many inauspicious omens that he saw, and he was filled with a lot of dread and misgivings. So while he is sharing these observations with Bhim, Arjun comes. And the 14th chapter is essentially a conversation between Yudhishthir and Arjun. So Yudhishthir begins by making many inquiries from Arjun, and in the 15th chapter, Arjun will respond to this inquiries. So 14th is essentially a list of queries that Maharaj Yudhishthir places in front of Arjun in trying to determine the cause of his being distraught and pale and visibly distressed. So these inquiries also give us a glimpse into what, when Varnashram Dharma is being followed, is the cause of happiness, and conversely, what is the cause of unhappiness. So we'll resume from verse 34. Previously, in the first 32 verses, Yudhishthir was mostly inquiring about the welfare of the citizens of Dwarka. And from the previous verse, he begins to now inquire specifically from Arjun as to the cause of him being distressed. So 114, 34. Bhagwan api govindo brahmane bhakta vatsalaha kachit pure sudharmayam sukhamasate suhurdvrata. Is Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives pleasure to the cows, the senses, and the brahmanas, who is very affectionate towards his devotees, enjoying the pious assembly at Dwarka, surrounded by friends. So this is Yudhishthira's last inquiry about Dwarkavasis. So if you remember by name, he had asked for Vasudev, the wives of Vasudev, Lord Balram, the children, the grandchildren. So Prabhupada says there were millions of residents of Dwarka, and Yudhishthira only inquires about those who are prominent. And now, of course, he's inquiring about the one who is most prominent. So if you note that Yudhishthira does not really inquire about the welfare of Krishna. And Prabhupada says the reason is that the Lord is all perfect himself. There could never be any question of his welfare. So the question by Maharaj Yudhishthira is simply inquiring about his residential place Dwarka, Puri, where pious men assemble. So he says, Sukhamaste Suhurt Vrata. That is he enjoying in the association of his devotees. So really speaking, that's the nature of Krishna. That he is Anandamay, he is the supreme enjoyer. And when he is in the association with his devotees, then he is manifesting these pastimes for his own pleasure and the pleasure of his devotees. So in the verse, Yudhishthira, he refers to Krishna by three names or three forms of address. So he says Govinda, Brahmanaya, Bhaktavatsala. So as Govinda, Krishna is the protector of the cows and also one who gives pleasure to the senses. So when Yudhishthira is saying how is Govinda, then he is implicitly inquiring that Krishna's nature is to give pleasure to the senses of his devotees. But is he concerned about my present state of anxiety? Yudhishthira at the current state is very anxious. His senses are more than the senses, his mind. But Manashashta Indriyani, the mind is also one of the senses. He is in a state of anxiety. So he's asking that is Krishna, who is famous as Govinda, who gives pleasure to the senses of his devotees, concerned about the state of my senses. Then he says Brahmanaya. Brahmanaya is Krishna, who is the protector of his devotees. So he's saying, is Krishna there for my protection? Is Krishna thinking of my welfare? And finally he says Bhaktavatsala. Bhaktavatsala is one who is subservient to his devotees. And Yudhishthira is asking that, why has Krishna abandoned me now? So the three names indicate three increasing forms of rasas. As Govinda, he's giving pleasure to the Lalita Mataji, can you mute your thank you. Prem Kishore Prabhu, is it possible to just do like a blanket mute? I mean, I'm okay right.
I did it, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. So, so there are three successively increasing intensity of interaction. As Govinda is giving pleasure to the senses. As Brahmanya, he is the well-wisher of his devotees, and as Bhaktvatsalya, he is actually giving his devotee a position that is higher than his own, and Yudhishthira is invoking all three of them. And really speaking, he's meditating on these in his own context. that I'm anxious. I feel fearful. I am feeling the absence of Krishna. So is Govinda, Brahmanaya, Bhaktavatsarya actually there? So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, therefore, we need his protection for our own interest. The Lord is a protector of the cows and the Brahmanical culture. A society devoid of cow protection and Brahmanical culture is not under the direct protection of the Lord, just as the prisoners in the jails are not under the protection of the king, but under the protection of a severe agent of the king. Without cow protection and cultivation of Brahmanical qualities in human society, at least for a section of the members of society, no human civilization can prosper at any length. Okay, so we'll move on to the next verse. So these are the next two verses, 35, 36. Mangalaya cha lokanam kshemaya cha bhavaya cha aste yadu kulamboda adyanant sakham puma yat bahudand guptayam swapuryam yadvorchata kridanti parmamanandam mahapaurashikaiva. The original personality of Godhead, the enjoyer, and Balram, the primeval Ananta, Lord Ananta, are staying in the ocean of the Yadu dynasty for the welfare, protection, and general progress of the entire universe. And the members of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of the Lord, are enjoying life like the residents of the spiritual sky. So here we see Yudhishthir again invoking the three aspects of Krishna's interaction with his devotees. So here he's specifically using the example of the Yadu dynasty, that Krishna is providing for their welfare, their protection, and their general progress. And under this three kinds of protection, the members of the Yadu dynasty are Iva Mahapaurishka. They are living like the residents of the spiritual sky. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that this verse is actually a metaphor of the creation. So the entire creation by Krishna is described in this verse. And this is how he explains it. So he says that the ocean of Yadu dynasty, Yadukula Ambodha, is like the ocean of milk, the Kshir Sagar. Then residing in this Kshir Sagar is Kshudakshay Vishnu, who is lying on Anantashesh. So this is Maharaj Yudhishthira talking about Krishna and Balram. So Kshudakshay Vishnu is an expansion of Krishna, and Anantashesh is an expansion of Lord Balram. So Krishna is addressed as Puman and Balram as Adhya Anantasakha. And they are residing amongst these Yadus. While residing in Dwarka, Yudhishthira states that Krishna and Balram are providing welfare, protection, and general progress of the entire universe. So as per Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Mangalaya also means prema. Kshemaya means liberation, and Bhavaya means material prosperity. Thus Krishna and Balram are providing bhakti, mukti, and bhukti to the entire material creation. So this includes all the material universes that are floating in the causal ocean. So again, these three are relating to the 3 points that we had said, that as Govinda, as one who is satisfying the senses. Krishna is providing bhukti. As Brahmanaya is providing mukti. And as Bhaktavatsalya is providing bhakti. So the metaphor so far is that Krishna and Balram, just like Shodaksha, Vishnu and Anant Shesh, are lying on the Shir Sagar, which is like the ocean of the Yadu dynasty, and providing bhakti, mukti, and uh, bhakti, mukti, and bhukti to all the residents of the material world. So then Yudhishthira states that Krishna is residing in his own city, Swapuram, with his own family, Yadava, and is providing them Bahudanda Guptayam, that is providing them constant confidential protection. This is now a description of the spiritual world. Even though everything is Krishna's world, but he considers the spiritual world as Swapuriya, as his very own, and he considers the residents of the spiritual world as his own family, Yadava, and he is providing them constant, uninterrupted Bahudanda Guptaya, that is providing them unlimited amount of protection, confidential protection, which means all the desires are fulfilled without any endeavor. So Yudhishthira is then referring to the residents of Dwarka as Mahapaurishaka. So Mahapaurishaka in one way means great warriors, and Mahapaurishaka is also used to describe the residents of Vaikuntha. So Yudhishthira says Iva, that the residents of Dwarka are like the residents of Vaikuntha. So he is establishing this metaphor. And finally he says that Kridanti Paramanandam, that he is enjoying with the Yadus. Kridanti means playing actually. So one plays completely for the sake of enjoyment. Paramanandam, that supreme pleasure in this pastimes, Archita. So Archita means as they deserve, which means that for the residents in the spiritual world, it is their right to enjoy loving pastimes with Krishna. Archita also means that as they deserve, meaning that Krishna is reciprocating to the moods that they are manifesting. Some of them deserve a reciprocation in Shantarasya, some of them deserve a reciprocation in Dasyarasya. So in this way, Krishna is reciprocating Archita as they deserve. So Yudhishthira through this verse is glorifying Krishna and Balram. He is glorifying Dwarka. He is glorifying the residents of Dwarka and establishing the position of Krishna as the all in all. Okay, next verse, 1437. Yada, okay, this is a different meter. Yatapad shushan mukhya karmana satyadayodayastha sahasrayoshita nirjitya sankheti dashamastada haranti vajrayuddha vallabhochitaha. Simply by administering comforts at the lotus feet of the Lord, which is the most important of all services, the queens of Dwarka, headed by Satyabhama, induce the Lord to conquer the demigods. Thus the queens enjoy things which are prerogative of the wives of the controller of thunderbolts. So this is Yudhishthir speaking about the Bhakta Vatsalya mode that he spoke about in the two verses previously. So, uh, so the wives of Krishna, um, the main form of bhakti that they executed. So remember, the wives of Krishna in Dwarka, they are all expansions of Lakshmi Devi. And what is the form of devotional service that Lakshmi Devi embodies? Padya Seva. She's constantly serving the lotus feet of the Lord. So Yudhishthir says that Yadapada Shushrushna Mukhya, that the wives of Krishna, they executed bhakti as Padya Seva, worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord as their Mukhya Karmana, as their primary activities. So the Mukhya Karman, it can be used to qualify the services of the queen and also to all services. So when applied to the services of the queen, it means that the primary service executed by the queens of Krishna and Dwarka was Padya Sevan. And when applied to all services, it means that the most important service of the queens was to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. So in both cases, it points to the potency of Padya Seva, which is considered as one of the 9 limbs of bhakti. So Yudhishthir states that in this mood of Bhakta Vatsalya, Krishna actually fought with Indra and took away the Parijata tree. So this pastime actually begins with Krishna fighting with Bhaumasur. And at that time, Satyabhama was along with him. So when actually Satyabhama killed Bhaumasur, then Krishna retrieved the earrings of the mother of the demigods, Aditi, and the umbrella. And then he went back to Indralok to give them back. And Indra was, of course, very grateful. So at that time, Satyabhama saw the Parijata tree growing in the courtyard of Indra's wife, Sachi. And then later on, she began to ask for it. And then she became so insistent that Prabhupada says, like a henpecked husband. Krishna then, he went back to Indralok and he uprooted the tree. And then he had a brief battle with Indra. Indra was, of course, defeated. And then he brought the Parijata tree back. And Satyabhama, she planted it in her own palace. Not really because she was interested in the Parijata tree, but mostly because it was an emblem of Krishna's love for her. So Srila Prabhupada describes this purport describes this pastime in the purport. So for most of these verses, I'm not. Srila Prabhupada has given brief description. I'm not going into the description again because you can read the purport, and I think it'll be more efficient time-wise. Next verse, 1438. Yadbhanudandabhyo dhyano jivano yadu pravira hayaktu bhayamoho adhi karmantyangri virahartam balad sabam sudharmam surasat mochitam. The great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of Lord Krishna, always remain fearless in every respect. And therefore, their feet trample over the Sudharma assembly house, which the best of demigods deserve, but which was taken away from them. So in the previous verse, Krishna personally went and retrieved the Parijata tree from Indra. This verse talks about the potency of empowerment by Krishna. That the Yaduvamshis, they felt so protected by Krishna's arms that they themselves went to the heavenly kingdom and they forcibly took the Sudharma. So Sudharma's assembly house is actually constructed by Vishwakarma for Indra. And the description of the hall is uh, that it is very beautiful. It has, and I forget the number of pillars, 10,000 pillars or something like that, made of Vaidurya, and very, 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 very elaborate. It also has this mystical property that whenever anybody enters into the hall, then there's 6 kinds of material pangs, which is hunger and thirst, and lamentation, and illusion, and old age and death. All of them pause. So the Yaduvamshis, when they heard about the hall, they said this should belong to Krishna. Actually, Krishna was not the king; Ugrasen was, but everything that they did was really for Krishna. So they themselves went and they forcibly took the hall and brought it back to Dwarka. So Prabhupada explains. So this is it's a bit of a subtle point here, that Krishna's protection is also through his empowerment. It's not necessarily that Krishna has to be actively next to you to protect you, but the notion of being protected by Krishna is also equally powerful. So Prabhupada explains this through an analogy in the purport, that a person may be fearful of a tiger in a dream, but another man who is awake by his side sees no tiger there. The tiger is a myth for both of them, namely the person dreaming and the person awake, because actually there is no tiger. But the man forgetful of the awakened life is fearful, whereas the man who has not forgotten his position is not at all fearful. So Prabhupada explains this to this dreaming about a tiger, that if you're sleeping and you dream about a tiger, the tiger appears to be real to you. And therefore the person goes into all kind of anxieties. For the person who is waking, there's no tiger because he's not sleeping. So that's why Srila Prabhupada says that the tiger is a myth to both of them. But a person who is sleeping, and sleep over here is compared to the mode of ignorance, that under the mode of ignorance, they consider the tiger to be real and thus they become fearful. So Prabhupada continues, thus the members of the Yadu dynasty were fully awake in their service to the Lord, and therefore there was no tiger for them to be afraid of at any time. Even if there was a real tiger, the Lord was there to protect them. So Prabhupada here brings home the analogy that the Yaduvamshis, they were fully awake in the service to Krishna. So one who is in the service to Krishna is protected from all kinds of illusions, and consequently is protected from all the anxieties that accompany that illusion. And even if there are any real dangers, Krishna is there to protect. So in either case, they are protected. Okay. Next verse. Kachitte anamayam tata brastateja vihasime alabdamano avgyata kimva tat chirositaha. My brother Arjun, please tell me whether your health is all right. You appear to have lost your bodily luster. Is this due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay at Dwarka? So the previous set of verses was Yudhishthira's inquiry into the welfare of the residents of Dwarka. So he inquires about the welfare of the residents of Dwarka, and then he concludes that nothing bad can happen to them because they are pure devotees of Krishna, and therefore they are always under Krishna's protection. So he says that this welfare inquiries, they are rhetorical. They don't really mean anything because of the special relationship that they have with Krishna. So Yudhishthira now turns his attention to Arjun. So he realizes that he has neglected to inquire about the welfare of Arjun, and empirically, just seeing Arjun, he could see that something was wrong with Arjun. So he notices that Arjun looks pale and dull. So he says that you appear to have lost your bodily luster. So bodily luster is also a reflection of one's mood. So even though our ability to see the subtle body is limited, but we can still get a sense of it. That sometimes when you're in the presence of a person who's very advanced spiritually, then even before the person speaks, you can get a sense of the effulgence in the person's face or in the person's demeanor. So this is just the strong mode of goodness or purified goodness that is manifesting. And earlier on, so our ability to see the subtle body also increases as our own moods become stronger in the area of goodness and pure goodness. So earlier on, the rishis, they had a clearer vision of one's subtle body, and that's why they were able to divine a lot of things about the person without having to speak to the person. So in addition to the bodily luster, he's also asking if your health is all right. And then out of strong brotherly affection, so he calls his brother repeatedly. He calls him Tat. So Tat over here is for my dear brother. It's a strong term of affection. My own brother, my dear brother. And he says Kaschitte Amayam Tata. And Teja Virasi Mi Alabdamana. And then he says Kimva Tata Chiroshit. Again he says, my dear brother, what is actually happening to you? So in the beginning from this verse, in the next 5 verses, from 39 to 43, Yudhishthira will put 10 questions before Arjun about the state of Arjun's health and mind. 2 of these questions are with respect to if somebody has done something to Arjun, and 8 questions are because of if Arjun has done something to somebody. So the nature of these questions are very revealing. That Yudhishthir is considering Arjun to be a lot more responsible for the state of his affairs as compared to other people or what others do. So generally our take is that we say we are happy if others around us are treating us properly, our family members are treating us with love and respect. So it's always outside us what others are doing. And conversely, when they're mistreating us, we become unhappy. But here Yudhishthir he's actually holding Arjun, and through proxy he's talking about the code of conduct, that primarily speaking, a person himself is responsible for his happiness and distress through his own actions, and not because of that of others. So he says that in this, due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay at Dwarka. So these are the So this is the only two reasons that he ascribes to others. So previously we had seen that Arjun had lived in Dwarka for 7 months, Saptamasha, and one of the axioms that is almost universally held to be true is that familiarity leads to disrespect. So Yudhishthir is asking that you lived there for such a long time, for 7 months. Because of that, were people in Dwarka, the Yadus, were they disrespectful to you? And then he talks about two kinds of disrespect. He says avgyata. So avgyata is disrespect by neglect. That you are in the guest is in the house, the host does not come to talk to him, or does not inquire about his welfare. So it's not by commission, it's by omission. And then he says alabdamana. This is the one when somebody is explicitly disrespectful. So so this is also something that we see or we should practice in the association of devotees, especially when we are dealing with devotees who are senior to you. So Srila Prabhupada would always make this almost like a rule that his disciples that were close to him, he would rarely let them stay for more than 6 months. And this was primarily for the protection of the bhakti of the disciples, because the worst thing that a devotee can do is to commit the sin of becoming overly familiar with the spiritual master. So sometimes the servants of Srila Prabhupada, they would see him just in a gamcha, they would personally give him massage, they would see him take a bath, they would see him sleep, eat. So uh, um, they would make this in their mind, they would start thinking that Prabhupada is an ordinary person. Or they might, even if they did not think that, they would just consider, they become overly familiar because of their own immaturity. And that's why Srila Prabhupada would make sure that nobody stays uh, uh, too long. Generally, he would limit it to about 6 months. Shruti Kirti Prabhu writes about this in his book. A similar line of reasoning is also behind Srila Prabhupada's instructions to most of his disciples to not spend too long in holy dhams, because then one becomes disrespectful because of over familiarity. And the same injunction is also generally held true for Vaishnava Acharya. So the best kind of association is between peers. So there are some devotees who try to seek out exclusive association with the more senior devotees. And because of that, inadvertently, offenses are committed, even though the senior devotees may not take offense, but because of this, they might commit offenses and impact their own bhakti. So that's why Vaishnava Sangha is very important, but the nature of Vaishnava Sangha is also very, very important. Three things are to be taken care of in Vaishnava Sangha. That it should be Swajati, it should be with one who has the same conception. It should be with people who are affectionate towards you, and it should be with people who are a little bit more advanced than you. So that kind of association is sustainable and nourishing. Okay, I'll stop here and see if there is any comments or discussions. Okay, if not, then we'll move on to the next verse, 1440. Kachinna bihato bhave shabdadi bihiramangalah nadatam muktam martibhya ashayayat pratishrutam. Has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? Could you not give charity to one who asked? Or could you not keep your promise to someone? So, abhihataha means beaten. So, unfriendly words is abhave shabda adibi. So, literally translated, it means that did somebody beat you with words? And uh, it's considered that physical blows, the the bruises and the hurt by the physical blows, they eventually go away. But the hurt that is caused by words, they they are very deep, and they stay for a long time. So this is again is talking about um, causes of misery on Arjun caused by other people. So this is more the case of somebody explicitly causing that misery on Arjun by abhava shabda adibi, by speaking words that are hurtful. So Duryodhan in Mahabharata, he actually experienced that firsthand uh, when uh, when he was invited for the Rajasuya Yagya, and he was moving around in the palace of Yudhishthir that was built by Mayadana. So it was impossible for him to distinguish between where was water and where was hard floor. And at one point he thought it was water, and he picked up his dhoti and walked carefully. Another point, when he thought it was actually ground, he stepped into it and fell. And then Draupadi, who was watching him, she started laughing. And the other Pandavas also started laughing. And according to certain commentators, this was one of the reasons why Yudhishthira became so determined to take revenge from the Pandavas, because that laughter, even though there were no words, but the derisive laughter actually pierced his heart. Similarly, one of the reasons why Karna became so inimical to the Pandavas was because of Draupadi. That when Draupadi's Swayamvar was being held, then this very difficult test of piercing the fish's eye with an arrow while looking into water, and Karna was one of the few people who could actually do it. So when he got up and picked up the bow and arrow, then Draupadi, and because it was Swayamvar, she had the right to say no. She refused, saying that Karna is not a Kshatriya; he's a Sutputra. And because of that, Karna became very inimical towards Draupadi and then her husbands, the Pandavas. So in addition to that, two other causes of unhappinesses are mentioned over here. So one he says is that could you not give in charity? So charity is the hallmark of Grahastha Dharma. And the second he says is that could you not keep your promise? So this is the hallmark of Kshatriya Dharma. So Arjun was a Grahastha and a Kshatriya. So his Swadharma is determined by his Varna, which is he is a Kshatriya, and his Ashram, which is Grahastha. So Yudhishthir is pinpointing to the basic building blocks of what does it take to execute your duty, and the implication over here is that so now onwards Yudhishthir is going to ask Arjun what he did not do or what he did that was not expected of him. So the underlying understanding of that is that when one does not act according to their dharma, then one falls from the mode of goodness to the mode of passion and ignorance, and these are the causes of anxiety and misery. Because as in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the mode of goodness is conditioned by happiness and knowledge, the mode of passion by anxiety, and the mode of ignorance by misery. And what is the cause of the mode of goodness? By executing your swadharma as determined by Varnashram. So that will be the mood of the questions that Yudhishthir will ask. That the duties that you are supposed to do as a Kshatriya and a Grahastha, were you able to do it? Okay, next verse. Kachitvam brahmanayam balam gam vridam roginam striyam sarannapsatram sattvam natyakshi sharan pradaha. You're always the protector of the deserving living beings such as brahmanas, children, cows, women, and the diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelters? So as a Kshatriya and as a king, it is Arjun's duty to provide protection. So in the Vedic civilization, the Brahmanas are protected because their focus of their life is intellect. So they have no skills in how to take care of themselves. They have no skills of conducting business or fighting or growing plants or cultivation, because their absorption is completely in the study of the scriptures and the intellectual pursuit. Then the children and the women and the sick, because of environmental factors, which is true in case of the sick and the children, and because of the natural propensity, which is true in case of the women are naturally not suited to protect themselves, and the sick and the children are because of the prevailing factors. So when the sick stop being sick, they can protect themselves. When the children grow up, then they can protect themselves. But the women, they always need protection. And cows are, so Yudhishthira talks about cows. So cows are like Brahmins. They provide nourishment. Prabhupada would say the milk of the cows nourishes the finer tissues of the brain. So they are used for intellectual advancement, but they have no ability to protect themselves. So if the cows were in the wild, there is very little ability. They cannot run fast. They don't have the ability to climb trees. Even the horns they have are mostly ornamental. Their spirit is also not one of aggression. Even though under different circumstances, when I was discussing this verse with my son, he was pointing out that when there is a bullfights in Spain, then the bulls are they're very, very aggressive, and they have some showing me a video about the running of the bulls, where the bulls run in the streets, and they basically they attack anybody in sight. Not knowing too much about it, my sense is that they are basically being provoked at the time. It's not the nature. So at least when the matador is fighting with them, the matador is sticking spears into them, and so they are just agitated at the time. But it is very unlikely that a cow or a bull will stalk somebody and attack them. So nature they're like Brahmins also. And then it's the duty of the Kshatriya. The word Kshatriya means Kshat, which means harm, and Atriya means protection, shelter. So basically, Kshatriya is one who protects from harm. And Arjun was not only a Kshatriya, but he was a great warrior, and he was famous for giving his protection. So in the burning of the in the burning uh, of the Khandav forest, he gave protection to Mayadana, to the point that he was actually willing to fight with Krishna. When Krishna said he's a Danav, I need to kill him, and Arjun said, no, he has come under my protection. It's my duty to protect him. So if you have to kill him, you have to go through me. Then he even gave protection to Indra, because Indra was harassed by this race of people called the Nivatkavachas. And Nivatkavachas had this benediction that they could not be defeated by Indra. So they would regularly go in and harass Indra. And then Indra actually went and asked Arjun to give him protection. So then Arjun went, and the Nivatkavachas, they lived in the depth of the ocean. So Arjun went there and he annihilated the entire race. And Arjun actually even gave protection to his own enemies. So when the Pandavas were in the forest, then at that time, once Duryodhan and Karna, etc., they decided to go and tease them. When they found out they were living very, very simply, they were wearing barks of trees and eating roots. So then Karna and Duryodhan and a small contingent of his army, they dressed in as princes with very, very splendorous armor, and they took along opulent chariots. And before they reached the camp of Pandavas, they decided to take a bath. And it so happened the Gandharvas were taking a bath there. So the Gandharvas asked them not to come. And Duryodhan was drunk with his own power. So he said, when I am here, there is no need for you to be there. So there was a battle between him and the Gandharvas. And the Gandharvas, headed by Chitrangad, actually started defeating Duryodhan. Karna was wounded, so he ran away from the battle. And one of the soldiers in Duryodhan's army, they ran to where the Pandavas were. And then Yudhishthir, he sent Arjun and Bhim, who then actually fought on to protect Duryodhan and defeat the Gandharvas. So this is when Duryodhan was so humiliated that he wanted to give up his life. But and there's a whole pastime in Mahabharata. But this is when Duryodhan gave this benediction to Arjun that one boon you can ask me anytime you want, which later on Arjun does ask when he asks for the 5 arrows that Bhishma had prepared to kill the Pandavas. So Prabhupada in the purport says, if such living beings do not get protection by the Kshatriyas or the royal order or by the state, it is certainly shameful for the Kshatriya or the state. If such things had actually happened to Arjun, Maharaj Yudhishthira was anxious to know about the discrepancies. So Srila Prabhupada is using it as a bit of a preaching purport, that the state is actually comprised of the Kshatriyas. So even in the current day and time, it is the duty of the state to provide protection to the Brahmanas and the women and the old and the sick. If they do not, it is shameful and it will be a cause of misery for them. Okay, verse 42. Kachitvam nagamo agmayam gamyam vasat kritam striyam rajito vat bhavan natamerna samahapati. Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character, or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? So Prabhupada talks about, in the purport, he talks about the contact between men and women of different castes. So impeachable character, at least Srila Prabhupada takes it in a slightly different context. It does not point to women or loose morals. So he talks about a woman of a different caste. And Prabhupada says that according to the Vedas, a man can marry a woman from a lower caste, and that is known as an uttam vivah. And uh, but a man should not accept a wife from a higher caste, which is considered to be adhama, which is unacceptable. So an example is given that when Lord Parshuram, he annihilated the Kshatriyas from the face of the earth, then the wives of the Kshatriyas, they married into the Brahmins because there were no suitable Kshatriya men. So the Brahmins were under the code of religion. It was acceptable for them to accept the Kshatriyas as the wife, and their offsprings were known as Sutas. Sutas, one meaning of Suta also is one of a mixed caste. So, and this is a little, it's a little complicated. So even though they are mixed caste, the children tend to take the caste of the mother. So that's how the Kshatriya race was revitalized there. Prabhupada gives the example of Bhima, that Bhima married Hidimbi, who was a Rakshasi, and that was with the blessings of Kunti Devi. And then Vyasadeva, he begat children in the womb of Ambika and Ambalika. Vyasadeva was a Brahman, and Ambika and Ambalika were both from the Kshatriya race. Similarly, the great Parashar Rishi, he begat Vyas in the womb of Satyavati, who belonged to the fisherman clan. However, there is another pastime of Yayati, who was approached by Devyani. And Yayati is a Kshatriya, and Devyani is the daughter of Shukracharya. So she was a Brahmani. So Yayati actually initially declines to marry. He calls this marriage as sinful, because he's a Kshatriya and she's a Brahmani. But later on, because of other mitigating reasons, he accepts Devyani. So Prabhupada in the purport writes, it appears from this verse that during the time of the Pandavas, free contact between man and woman was allowed in certain conditions only. And then later on he writes, a woman approaching a man for contact should never be refused. But at the same time, the discretion as above mentioned may also be considered. So, for example, when the great Rishi Vishrava, who is the descendant of Pulastya Rishi, he was in meditation and he was approached by Kaikeshi, and Kaikeshi was from the Daitya clan. Then Kaikeshi actually mentions that I am a woman and it's your duty to accept me. And because it was in accordance with the Vedas, then Vishrav actually, he accepts Kaikeshi, and that's how Ravan is, and the others are born. Similarly, in the Bhagavatam, there is the pastime of Diti accepting Kashyap, and Kashyap Rishi is unwilling to engage because it's an inauspicious time. But then Diti insists, and then Kashyap says that I cannot refuse you because it would be against religious codes and conduct. So the possible fault that Yudhishthira is considering is that Arjun approached a woman that he should not have, or conversely, he did not properly respect a woman he should have. So both of them are equally debilitating. That approaching a woman that you should not have. So approaching a woman here means approaching in a mood that is inappropriate. So he's saying that did you approach a woman with an inappropriate mood, or did you not give proper respect to a woman? Then the other aspects that Yudhishthira is talking about is valor. So valor is chivalry is like the characteristic of a Kshatriya. And he says to Arjuna, were you defeated by unworthy opponents? And that would explain him being morose. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, it is abominable for a Kshatriya to be defeated by one who is inferior in strength or equal in strength. If one is defeated at all, he should be defeated by some superior power. Arjun was defeated by Bhishma Dev, and Lord Krishna saved him from the danger. This was not an insult for Arjun because Bhishma Dev was far superior to Arjun in all ways, namely age, respect, and strength. But Karna was equal to Arjun, and therefore Arjun was in crisis when fighting with Karna. It was felt by Arjun, and therefore Karna was killed even by crooked means. Such are the engagements of Kshatriyas, and Maharaj Yudhishthir inquired from his brother whether anything undesirable happened on the way home from Dwarka. So another example of Arjun being defeated by a superior opponent was when he fought with Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, of course, defeated Arjun over and over again, but Arjun always considered that to be his glory. He would, when he would boast, he would say that I pleased Lord Shiva by my fighting. And he would not mention that Lord Shiva defeated him because that was acceptable. Lord Shiva is Mahadev. So being defeated by one who is far superior to you itself is not a matter of shame. Okay, we have two more verses till the end of the chapter. So we have verse 43. Api svitparya bhunktastvam sambhojayan vradabalakan jugupsitam karma kinchit kritvanayad akshamam. Have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? Have you committed some unpardonable mistake which is considered to be abominable? So parya bhungtas means eating without feeding. And amongst the essential grahastha dharma, as we mentioned, is charity. And charity is dravya, is money. It's also anna. It's also giving, feeding the hungry. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, besides that, an ideal householder is required to call for any unknown hungry man to come and dine before he himself goes to take his meal. He is required to call for such a hungry man thrice on the road. The neglect of this prescribed duty of a householder, especially in the matter of old men and children, is unpardonable. So these are the duties of a grahastha in compensation to the concessions that are made for a grahastha. So the grahastha is allowed to live a life of relative comfort. They're allowed to make money, they're allowed to accrue wealth, they're allowed to create an establishment, they're allowed to have a conjugal relationship. But this is what are the compensating factors. So Prabhupada mentions that it's a duty of a grahastha that before they eat, they have to step out of their house and 3 times they have to ask in a loud voice that if anybody is hungry. And if somebody is indeed hungry, they have to first feed the person and then they should eat themselves. And Prabhupada, especially old men and children, because old men and children are anyway to be protected. So the last statement which Maharaj Yudhishthira says, have you committed some unpardonable mistake which is considered to be abominable? So it's something of a catch-all. So there are of course so many dharmas depending on one's varna and ashram, and Yudhishthira is definitely not going to exhaustively ask about all of them. So he asked about the prominent ones and now he's just asking in a general way that did you do something that was unpardonable. So if we summarize in the queries of Yudhishthir in the last 5 verses, so we see that he has asked 10 questions of Arjun, and 2 are because of action of others, and 8 are because of actions performed by Arjun. So we'll quickly summarize them. In verse 39, he said that others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay in Dwarka. Again in 39, has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? Verse 40, could you not give charity to one who asked? Could you not keep your promise to someone? Could you not give brahmanas, children, cows, women, and the disease protection when they approached you for shelter? Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character? Have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? Have you left the elderly and children and taken your meals alone? Have you committed some unpardonable mistake which is considered to be abominable? So the interesting thing to note over here is that all these 10 questions that were asked by Yudhishthir to Arjun, Arjun has committed all these 10 offenses, and but in a different context. So in the Mahabharata, the return of Arjun from Dwarka, it follows the Mausal Leela. So the Mausal Leela is, I'm sure you're all familiar, but very briefly, by the curse of Durvasha Rishi and the other rishis. Um, there is this fratricide, this fighting amongst the Yadus, and ultimately Lord Balram, he leaves the planet. Shri Krishna, then he instructs his charioteer Daruk. He says, you go back to Dwarka, and Arjun is there. You ask Arjun to give protection to the women and the old people in Dwarka. Take them out of Dwarka, because Dwarka will very soon sink. So then Arjun, according to the instructions of Krishna, he's taking the wives of Krishna and the old and the children in the forest. And at that time he is attacked by the Ahiras, by forest dwellers. And they actually defeat Arjun. And they kidnap the women. This is talked about more. I'm just giving you a brief description. So not quite in the way that Yudhishthir is asking, but it's almost like Saraswati Devi is sitting on the tongue of Yudhishthir and making him ask these questions. And all these questions are actually, in one way or the other, they are they have been committed by Arjun. Some of them more directly, that have you been able to protect? Have you been defeated by somebody inferior? Could you not keep your promise? Arjun had given Krishna the promise that could you not give in charity? Protection was a form of charity. And some of them in a more indirect way, that did you not properly treat a deserving woman? So his inability to protect them is in that category. So this will when Arjun begins to talk, we'll see this in greater depth. Okay, next verse, which is the last verse. After that, we'll break for questions and discussions, and depending on how long that takes, either we'll end the lecture at this chapter, or we can start with the next. We'll see how that goes. I'm more inclined to start the new chapter with the next lecture, but we'll see. So verse 44, Kaschet prestatamena hridyenatma bandhuna shunyasmi rahito nityam manyasete anyatha naruk. Or is it that you're feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Oh, my brother Arjun, I can think of no other reason for you becoming so dejected. So the questions that Yudhishthira asked were basically questioning Arjun's ability to be a Kshatriya or follow his dharma. And very much like Yudhishthira did for the Yadus, he also negates his own line of reasoning. So in the earlier part of the chapter, Yudhishthira had begun to inquire about the welfare of the Yadus. And then he concludes that there is no reason for me to inquire about the welfare of the Yadus because they are protected by Krishna. So then he turns his focus to Arjun, and then he starts asking Arjun all these questions. Did you do this? Did you do that? And now he says that there's no reason for me to ask these questions because it is not possible to Arjun to deviate from his swadharma. So in a way, this is also a true statement. So while it is true that Arjun was not able to keep his promise, protect the women and all that, but because it was the desire of Krishna, it was not a failing on the part of Arjun. So when Yudhishthira is concluding that Arjun could not have deviated from his swadharma, that is actually an accurate statement. So he is also remembering the statement that was made by Narad Muni in the previous chapter. So this was in the 50th verse of the previous chapter when Narad Muni said that the Lord has already performed his duties to help the demigods and is awaiting the rest. You Pandavas may wait as long as the Lord is here on earth. So Yudhishthira summarizes to Arjun, Manyasete anyatha naruk. I cannot think of any other reason for your distress. So what is the reason that he is thinking? That you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna. So this points to, this is actually a glorification of Arjun. So it points to two aspects of Arjun's character that that Yudhishthira is glorifying. One, as we discussed, that he considers Arjun to be very strongly established in his swadharma. So he's saying you cannot deviate from your dharma, and we see examples of that. That Arjun was so firm with his word that he would rather give up his body than give up his word. When the Jayadratha pastime was happening in Mahabharata, he said, if I don't kill him till the sun sets, I will enter into the fire. When the protection for the Brahmana sons and the Dwarka happened, Arjun made the same promise. If I don't protect your next son, I will enter into fire. When he gave his word to protect Mayadana, he was willing to go against his most dear friend Krishna to protect. So he's saying, Arjun, you cannot go against your dharma. So all these questions that I have asked make no sense. And the other aspect that is glorifying of Arjun is his intimate relationship with Krishna. So he's saying that I see that you are so dejected because you have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna. So for a person who is a devotee, there is no greater calamity than losing the association of Krishna or losing the association of other devotees. So, in this verse, after seemingly criticizing Arjun by asking all these questions, one might think that it's a criticism. Like if you go to somebody's house and you're dejected, then the nature of the question that the person asks is also a reflection on what the person thinks about you. So if the person starts asking, are you dejected because today you were trying to steal some money and you were not able to steal? Or are you dejected because you were teasing women and you got caught? So what is the line of those questions? That the other person is indicating that that one has a propensity to tease, or one has a propensity to molest women. So the line of question is in a way revealing Yudhishthir's evaluation of Arjun. But then he negates all that. And he says that that is not possible. And of course, Bhagavatam is a preaching scripture. So through this, Yudhishthir is also talking about the duties, very briefly, the duties of a Kshatriya and a Grahastha. But more importantly, the duty of, the importance of following duty. If you do not follow duty, you're distressed. If you follow your duty, your happiness, you're in the state of happiness. And more importantly, Yudhishthira is glorifying Arjun's position as a devotee. So this ends the chapter, which is primarily questions about leading to Krishna's disappearance between Yudhishthira and Arjun. I'll stop here and see if there's any comments or discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, question. I don't know if it is anywhere referenced or anything. I don't know if it is a question also. I'm just curious about it. Was there any reference like when Krishna left the body, the day when he leaves the body, leaves the material body?
You mean which tithi he left his body?
Yeah, like how we celebrate Janmashtami. Is there any reference anywhere? It's just a curious question.
I don't know, Prabhu. Not sure. No, I wouldn't know.
And one other question, how we need to take the perspective when Arjuna was defeated by those, I don't know if, by those robbers, right? In terms of protecting wives and old age and kids, where he had the ability. But is it like we should conceive that as a Leela of Krishna in making everyone come to Goloka? It is like is that the way we need to perceive? Or, because definitely from the deity wise, he had.
It is a Leela in a slightly different way. We'll discuss this more, but there were a couple of lessons that come out of this. One is that Arjun will himself say in the next chapter that without the empowerment given to me by Krishna, I'm nothing. So he starts the chapter by glorifying his own strength. That I did this, I did that, I fought with Lord Shiva and pleased him, I defeated Indra, etc., etc. And then he says, but all this is not me. This is all Krishna. And how is he able to say that conclusively? That he says when Krishna left, he took away his protection, so I was completely useless. So that is the more explicit lesson that comes from this. I guess more. I mean, the acharyas, they dig deeper into this, and what they explain is that the ahiras were actually all expansions of Krishna himself, because nobody can actually touch Krishna's wives.
Yeah.
So it was expansions of Krishna, and there is some other pastime that is related to this, which I am not recollecting. But when the ahiras actually when they actually attacked the procession, many of the wives of Krishna, they voluntarily left with them. So they did not like resist, or they did not give up their bodies. They actually took up, they got up, they took their stuff, and they walked away with them. And they are all expansions of Lakshmi Devi, who can only be happy with Lord Vishnu. So from this one can understand, that's how the Acharya explained, that they were all expansions of Krishna, So that points to the aspect you were saying. So yes, in that way, it's a Leela. The Krishna, through his own expansions, is kidnapping his own wives.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Now, Hare Krishna, Achyuta, welcome back. You've been missing a lot of classes.
Yes, Prabhu. I just came back from India like a couple hours ago.
Oh, okay. You were in India.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. So Prabhuji, I missed few classes. I'm just wondering, like, I have one question based on the previous set of verses in this chapter. I don't know if you've covered it. I'll go back and listen to your previous lectures anyways, but I just wanted to ask, and you can direct me if you've already covered this. But in verse 3, it says, like, I mean, in the previous verses actually, for between 1 and 5, like, there are these symptoms that Maharaj Yudhishthir sees, the inauspicious omens. So so does that, like, like there was like natural increase in lust, greed, and things like that in the general populace. So is that a reflection of uh, us, like, if when when obviously, yeah, it's like when Krishna is not the um not in the center, then basically these qualities increase.
That is correct. And also, it's a reflection on the age of Kali. And I think it's synonymous because in the age of Kali is characterized by Krishna not being in the center. But essentially, that is what Yudhishthir was observing, the symptoms that characterize the beginning of the age of Kali. Prabhupada writes in the purport that he was surprised to see it because he did not have any past experience of it. That these kind of dealings were in the general populace were almost unknown. Now we see a lot of conspiracies happening amongst the Kauravas and the Pandavas, Duryodhan trying to poison Bhima and trying to burn them down, etc. But they are considered to be extraordinary. They're not considered to be ordinary dealings. And that is why the consequence of this was that this great battle was fought in which they were punished by death. But the general populace, by and large, were unaware of these kinds of dealings. And when Yudhishthir himself saw it, then he's shocked. So when Krishna left, the age of Kali began. So it is said that the age of Kali began when the moment when Krishna left, and it became stronger when Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj. That was the second step that Kali took in the planet Earth. And when Maharaj Parikshit left his body at that time, because Maharaj Parikshit was protecting his populace from the age of Kali, when Maharaj Parikshit left, then Kali fully stepped into that. And since then, because it is his time, so since then he's been having a good time.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, actually, so where I'm going with this is, I was listening to a lecture in Vrindavan. I was in Vrindavan for a few days, and um, the one point that has been, I didn't get a chance to ask this question to the speaker because of time limitation, but it's kind of related to this this lust, anger, like, thing. Um, so what he was mentioning, that our conditionings is not, like, I'm just abbreviating, he was saying that our conditionings are not directly proportional to our faith, which I was thinking, on the contrary, our conditionings are basically define our faith. So so, like, for example, like, I mean, if I'm conditioned to not tolerate heat, or dust, or whatever it is, or like, I mean, whatever you see in the dham, like, externally, like, if you're not like, if you don't really have faith, then you will see all the other things. But this statement that the conditionings are not directly proportional, or yeah, not directly proportional to the faith. So basically, even if you're, so it depends, like, even if you're conditioned, it does, internally, your faith might be different than your conditioning. So I'm kind of wondering, in like, if this lust, anger, greed, like, these like, these are, in one sense, they're conditionings, right? So like, if these are, do these define or not define our faith?
So in a way, I think both the observations that you're making are correct, or you're sharing are correct. The statement that faith has nothing to do with conditioning is correct, because faith comes from a spiritual platform and conditioning is on a material platform. So we often say that spirit has nothing to do with matter. Um, Anybody can become a devotee, regardless of the modes that the person is, whether the person is in a mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. They have the right to execute devotional service. The statement that you're making is also correct, and I think you're talking more about the execution of bhakti as being conditioned by one's modes. That um, a person who is more brahmanical will execute faith by becoming a priest. A person who's more kshatriya-like might execute faith by taking a management position in the temple, or becoming a book distributor. And a person who's more submissive might demonstrate their faith by taking some menial service at the temple. So all three are, in a way, they're bhakti at the same level, whether a person is on the altar or cleaning the bathroom or out on the road distributing books. But uh, 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 nevertheless, they are the products of the impact of one's material conditioning um, on one's bhakti. So the way I understand is that material conditioning may impact the way one executes bhakti, but the quality of bhakti is completely independent of one's conditioning.
um Ruchi, you're talking about, like, conditionings in terms of, like, the modes, or like the modes that we are conditioned with, but I'm like more referring to conditionings in terms of, like, um which basically, actually, it, in one sense, it like defines, it more or less defines the faith. So like, if I see Yamuna, if I see Ganga now, and if I see, like, all the dirty things that are put in it, and if I choose not to bathe in them, then, is that my faith, or is that my conditioning, that I'm not conditioned to, like, living in a place where these things are like, common to see, and but so it's like, if I basically, if I
I understand what you're saying. So it reflects. So difficult for me to talk about you, but I can talk about people in general. It reflects the fact that they're executing mixed devotional service. That the bhakti is mishrit. So if a person is a Shuddha Bhakt, then they see Yamna, then it is Yamna. Does not make a difference whether it is clean or dirty, or it is hot or cold. They will feel the same kind of ecstasy. But because when Shuddha Bhakti gets mixed with, and again, uh, whenever we talk about mixing, we're talking about what is getting mixed with. So it gets mixed with the modes. That's when the difference comes. So I'm trying to think of an example. May not be a complete parallel, but Srila Prabhupada had this, would have this vision
of the purity of a place, especially in the holy dham. His disciples would mention that he would be sitting, especially when he was in Vrindavan and Mayapur, that there would be flies buzzing around him, and he would be sitting completely undisturbed. And the other disciples, they would be swatting at the flies and the mosquitoes and the insects. But either they did not bother Prabhupada, or Prabhupada was not bothered by them. One of the, or maybe both of them. So one of those examples that they were there, but the purity of Prabhupada's vision did not, was not contaminated by this. And his disciples who were more mishrit, they were able to make all this distinction, focus on the other things. If you dial it completely to the other side, people who have very, very weak bhakti, or who have just a modicum of bhakti. I have had this personal experience that they actually look at Vrindavan as very repugnant. So there is, so in us there is some attraction, that even though there is all the heat and the cheating and the mosquitoes and all that, but we still go there because we have some attraction for Vrindavan. There are so many people who live in Delhi, they'll never go to Vrindavan because they just say it's a dirty place, there are people who are cheating you over there. So there the material aspect is so strong and the bhakti is so weak that they completely look upon it from a material perspective.
So you are saying that you're basically saying the opposite of what I heard in the Bhagavatam class, that that our conditionings are related to the bhakti.
So I'm trying to actually reconcile both the perspectives, that the quality of our bhakti is independent of our conditioning, which means that everybody has a right to execute bhakti regardless of the quality of the conditioning. But the execution of the bhakti will be impacted by our conditioning. So we cannot deny somebody bhakti just because a person is a meat eater or a person is a sinful person. He has the same right to bhakti as a person who is living a Brahmanical life and a pious life. So that way, conditioning has no impact on the faith. But having taken to bhakti, the execution of one's bhakti, till the time we become more Shuddha, is to a great extent determined by our conditioning. Does that help, or have I completely confused you?
I need to listen to this again, Roji. I mean, it does. I understand that it is like, obviously, like, I know if I have more, like, if I have more greed, for example, then my manifestation of bhakti will be different than if I have less of that quality. But so yeah, I mean, I understand that. But I'm trying to understand, like, I mean, like, there was this one devotee that told me that he was a brahmachari, and he's been practicing since more than 20 years. And he was saying that earlier when they would go for yatras, they would just go into the Yamuna, and, like, Radhanath Maharaj would say that, okay, even if you see some fecal matter or whatever, like, just push it away, and you can just bathe in it. But he said that now he doesn't think that he can do it, like, he cannot so I don't know if, like, if over the period of time, has it increased his bhakti or decreased his bhakti in that sense, because his conditionings, maybe because he's been, he doesn't live in India anymore, he lives outside of India. So whether that has changed, so in that sense I'm just asking. And so his conditionings, has it affected his faith?
Well, I think our journey to bhakti is very, very personal. Difficult for me to generalize based on one person's observation. But generally speaking, earlier on when we take to bhakti, we are more enthusiastic. We tend to do things that are, that maybe later on we are not able to do. People who take to bhakti, when they initially get the mercy of Krishna and devotees, then a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them will practice very enthusiastically. And they'll go for Mangalarti, they'll chant 16 rounds in the morning, they'll do Nirjala Ekadashi. I know when I initially started in Krishna consciousness, then for many years all my Ekadashis were Nirjala Ekadashis. And just the last Ekadashi, I ate kutu, atta, puri, and aloo sabji. So I was reminiscing on it myself, that how things change. So to some extent, one's enthusiasm is Krishna's initial impetus to push us through, and that once it has pushed us through, that kind of goes away. And there are other reasons also, that as one practices, we discussed about the offense of over familiarity. As one practices for a longer time, then one begins to commit the offenses of over familiarity with the rituals, over familiarity with the deities, with the devotees, and then different kinds of anarthas also settle in. That's not to say the person that you were talking to has anarthas, but generally speaking, our initial engagement with bhakti is a lot more enthusiastic. Then it takes a dip, and then after that there's a steady rise. As long as we don't commit offenses, there is a steady rise that will basically then take us through the rest of the life or lives. Another thing also is, and I don't know whether the time period that this brahmachari were talking with, 20 years means that he was not around when Prabhupada was around. But I do notice that devotees who were around when Prabhupada were around were able to do things that were way beyond their adhikar. They were able to perform tasks that were completely disproportionate to their adhikar. And the understanding is that was because of the personal empowerment of Srila Prabhupada. If you read some of the books that are written about the earlier devotees, I was reading Mukund Maharaj's book on the miracle on 26th Avenue, and he talks about the establishment of the Krishna conscious movement in London, and you get the constant sense of amazement from his own side, that how were we able to do it. And Shyam Sundar Prabhu has also written a book, and he also echoes the same sentiment, that with very little understanding of spirituality, with very little adherence to sadhana themselves, they were able to do something that Bhakti Siddhanta had sent his sannyasi disciples and they could not do. And understanding is because of Prabhupada's empowerment. So different reasons. It's it's a whole topic in itself.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I think there was there's Mataji and Ravi. So
I just had a quick comment. Because Achyuta Mataji was talking about bathing in Yamuna. I heard from Guru Maharaj some lecture, where he talks about bathing in Yamuna, and he says, he doesn't bathe in it, in the river, but he sprinkles some water on the head. And the understanding I got from that was, there is also this element of common sense, especially when it is so polluted. And that's where I feel like this faith and practicality, it meets where there is common sense. That's how I look at it.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yes. The sprinkling of the water on the head, in the Shastra, it is considered to be at the same level as taking a bath. So it's basically taking a bath but not exposing yourself. to do it, to whatever the element says. And practically speaking, Yamuna stops at Delhi. So after Delhi, what comes down the riverbed is actually the sewage from Delhi. It's not really Yamuna anymore, because the entire water of Yamuna is sucked up in Delhi. So there is this Save Yamuna project that is going on. I know my wife is kind of active active in a way that she has signed up for it, and she sends stuff, etc. But it's, I think, more specific for Yamuna. But the general observation is accurate, that one should use the common sense and act according to the way that is sustains your bhakti and sustains your sustains you from a practical perspective. Thank you for sharing that with Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. When for Pran Kishore Prabhuji's question, like that the queens of Dwarka, they have not resisted. Is it because the bowmen, like that low class bowmen, they're actually Krishna only came in their form to, that is why they didn't resist?
That's the understanding. So it's one of the things that have a lot of commentaries on. I don't know the full extent of the commentaries. So not all the wives resisted. So different wives did different things. Some of them willingly went with the Ahiras. Some of them gave up their lives, and some of them went after resisting and being overpowered by them. So my sense is there is some deeper understanding over there which I'm not aware of. But the general understanding that is given is that, and this was actually, if my memory serves me right, it is one of the lectures by Radha Govind Maharaj. He makes this point that the Ahiras were actually all expansions of Krishna, because nobody other than Krishna can touch Krishna's wives.
Yes, Prabhu. That is true. Yes, Prabhu. And I think we are late by time, so I will not ask another question.
Okay. Thank you. We can discuss it in the next lecture, Prabhu, then. Vancha kalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nithai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.